This is going to be a draft profile examination and evaluation of Zay Flowers, the fourth wide receiver that I've kind of gone over a lot of his film in depth. And just to let you know, if this is your first draft profile video of mine that you've watched, there won't be any college film displayed here. I don't do that on this channel. I try to show some college film on Twitter, TV angle, all 22 angle, etc., but I don't put it on my YouTube channel. Anyway, this is one of the most interesting and fun prospects or draft profile videos that I've done this year because the film and his skills are just very unique compared to a lot of the other guys that we see. I mean, I guess in this draft class, Tank Dell would be a guy who's similar to him or closer to him in terms of the skill set and the plays. But let's get a few things out of the way right now. I think he'll get drafted somewhere between 28 and 45 or so in this year's draft. I think if a team has a need for a guy who can make people miss, juke defenders, tightrope down the sideline, or just erase angles on pursuing defenders, meaning take a drag underneath the zone coverage and just outrun people to the sideline and then turn it up the sideline tightrope for a 16, 18, 22-yard gain, I think that Zay Flowers will get picked in that range. I think it's possible he gets picked earlier. He's only 5'9", a little over 180. I think 182 at the Combine Saturday. 4.42 40-yard dash, 35-inch vertical. Only like a 69 or 70-inch wingspan, somewhere around there. But in my opinion, he didn't do anything negative at the Combine thus far that moves him down, in my opinion. I think his performance over his 4-year career at Boston College, he's a three-star recruit coming out of Florida, a very highly rated high school in Florida, and then Boston College really, I think, did a great job getting him and securing him over a couple of other schools. His performance over the 4 years shows you that he's a playmaker. The attributes, and when I say attributes, I don't mean physical attributes. I mean the attributes with which he plays with. So I'm going to say some of those. He plays incredibly hard. He's willing to block. I don't think he's a capable blocker at the NFL level when you're talking about nickel safeties, strong safeties, or linebackers on a crack scheme. I don't think he's going to be suited to do those things. Having said that, he runs very, very violently with the football. He breaks tackles. He plays with a high level of confidence and belief. In my opinion, Zay Flowers believes he's the best player on the field. I have an NBA comparison that I'll kind of reveal later if I hopefully remember to. He makes people miss, and I'll try to only say that 2 or 3 more times in this video. His change of direction skills, he's very abrupt. When he can be going in one direction, put his foot in the ground, and literally burst back in the other direction, almost be at full speed 1.5 to 2 steps later after that change of direction. Insane footwork, if you ask me. I've seen him tightrope up the sideline 2 times where his upper body appears to be like hanging out of bounds, and his hips are somehow like not parallel to the line of scrimmage. They're almost tilted to where his body should fall out of bounds. Maybe it's because he's shorter, 5'9", maybe 5'9.5" or something like that. He's in those 2 situations I'm describing. He almost like defied gravity. He tight-roped up the sideline. If you follow me on Twitter, I think it was against Duke in 2020. I might be wrong there. For like an extra 12 yards after it looked like he should have or almost did fall out of bounds, or step out of bounds, I should say. But then when you saw the end zone angle, you're like, he didn't step out of bounds until he gained another 12 yards. And his footwork is automatic. It looks innate. It looks natural. I hate this word, but it's twitchy, meaning it's immediate. There's no rounding of some of his cuts. I don't even like the acronym YAC, or yards after the catch. I'm fine with the saying. I just don't like people who say the word YAC constantly, and that's their first thing that they refer to, because there's so much more to it. A lot of that is scheme dependent, but Zay Flowers is a guy who I think can take the scheme that's provided in terms of gaining yards after the catch, and then he can expand on it. Now let's do a little bit of negative stuff. The drops have been mentioned. Apparently he had 9 drops in 2022. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't see that issue on film. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I only have, if I'm going to do draft profiles on multiple players, I generally am only watching 4 or 5 games. And I watched 4 games to evaluate here. Duke and Pittsburgh in 2020, and then NC State and Syracuse in 2022. Now, I had the Clemson game from 2021 in terms of the all-22, but look, that file was like 7.5 gig. It was a huge file, so I didn't download it to watch it. I just watched it on a stream, and I didn't chart it, to be honest with you. So for this draft profile, And for the things that I'll quote, I'm only really focusing on 4 games, so I've realized it's a small sample size. I picked NC State and Syracuse for a couple of reasons. First of all, statistically dominant or had a huge impact in those games. NC State, 7 catches, 130, and then 2 touchdowns. And then Syracuse, 8 catches, 110, and 2 touchdowns. But I think the second touchdown was a garbage touchdown late in that game there, but I could be wrong. If you're someone who's been on the Zay Flowers bandwagon for weeks, there's been a couple people who messaged me, more than a couple actually, asked me to look at Zay Flowers film. I was doing so. It just takes me a while to come to conclusions. I don't want to co-sign what other people say. So that's where I'm willing to say, like, I don't see the drops problem. I'm not saying that it's not going to be an issue. I just haven't seen it in the games that I watched. And so I'm not going to co-sign someone else's evaluation, even though we did have 9 drops in 2022. Now, I did see times where the ball was thrown off target and he's able to get one hand on it, not secure the football. I don't know if that goes down as a drop or not. All right, so he played outside receiver just as much as he played slot, at least from what I saw for Boston College. They moved him around. Him and other receivers seemed to be interchangeable in terms of their alignment. I saw plays where 2 of their receivers, Zay Flowers and another receiver, would go to the left, and then Zay Flowers would, take his thumb and point to the other side, and the receiver go to the other side. Or they'd be lined up one way, and then they'd switch right before the final alignment of the offense. What I'm saying is, I think even though he may project as a slot guy in the NFL, and I'm comfortable if you want to say that, I'm not going to, because enough film exists of him making plays as an outside receiver that he appears to have that ability. Is he going to win jump balls and back shoulder? I've seen him win some back shoulder fades, and I actually seen him win some post routes against safeties and basically moss people. Look, Boston College offense in 2022 was quite poor. I think they averaged like 18 points per game, maybe a little less than that, actually. They were like the 10th or 12th worst scoring offense in NCAA FBS in 2022. And I have heard from some people who I really like and respect that Zay Flowers, like, he got a ton of touches. He was the focus of the offense. He got so much padded stats because there was no other weapons like him. Well, I will agree with the fact there was no other weapons like him for Boston College's team, even though I did think they had one other good receiver. In 2022. But I will not co-sign this. I don't think his stats are inflated. Let me go through a little bit of stats here for his final 3 years at BC in terms of just passing. Or reception, 2020, 55 catches on 103 targets. That was a sophomore year. I think he had 9 touchdowns that year. 2021, 44 catches on 82 targets. I think his touchdowns were down that year. 2022, this past season, 78 catches on 124 targets. Sounds like for this 2022, like almost 63% to me in terms of catch percentage, along with 12 touchdowns in 2022 and like almost 1,100 yards receiving. I'm going to tell you something. In the film that I watched, really focusing on NC State and Syracuse, because that's the most recent film, 2022, along with the other 3 games, I think he could have been used more. I think they could have relied on him more. I don't think that he was overutilized. I don't think that he was the guy who got the ball 22, 24 times in however way they could design it. It didn't seem like that to me. I think there could have been more times he got the ball on top of the touches and targets he had already, really focusing that in on 2022, to be honest with you. Some of the problems, situations where he's open, he's open and available to get the football probably 4 or 5 times in the Syracuse and NC State game each. If not 4, definitely 3. Either there was just pressure on the quarterback and Flowers' route, whether it was a deep out, a sideline comeback, a double move, which he's really good at. The quarterback didn't have him available as a potential target because he didn't have time. Or the quarterback had gotten rid of the ball quicker. It looked like he threw some checkdowns early, whereas Flowers was working on a double move route. I saw that dynamic that I just described at least 4 times in the 2 films I watched from 2022, meaning Flowers is open on a double move and the ball's already out to a running back check down, who is wide open, don't get me wrong, but to me, I thought that should have been a little bit later in the progression. I'm not trying to be harsh on the quarterback because, I don't know what he was told in his helmet or what he was told to be the read. But in any case, the O-line was inconsistent, and the quarterback often did not have time to get Zay Flowers the football on some of the routes he was running downfield where I thought he was wide open. So basically, what I'm saying is I don't think his statistics in 2022 were inflated. I think they were suppressed. And I understand it. Some people will not have the same evaluation. The NC State game, I was one I want to mention. He has 7 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. He played slot or outside receiver, often. He was interchangeable. And here's what NC State did more as the game developed. And I'm going to read you some of my notes in a minute. I'm reading this and talking about this game in particular because I watched it and I watched the progression and record my notes chronologically so that I can see how the coverage changed over the course of the game. He made some big plays early in the middle part of the game. And then what NC State started to do was have a DB assigned to him, a corner or slot corner, whatever, on a particular leverage, inside or outside leverage, and then a safety over the top. Now, things aren't that simple. That's not how you just take someone away, but I saw Boston College twice in an NC State game late line him up on one side and then kind of walk him over to the other side as the outside receiver. And what NC State did was, I'm talking about basically line up as a slot on one side, the left side of the offense, for example, and then move all the way over to the other side and be the outside receiver on the offense's right. And what NC State did was the safeties would communicate and basically move over the top of where he was aligned up. Think of how teams defend Tyreek Hill, and then basically leave the other guys man-to-man with maybe some safety help on the backside if it was a 2-by-2 formation. My point is, as the game went on longer, NC State was allocating more resources to Zay Flowers because they had to, because he was such a problem, in my opinion, with the potential to win deep routes. So here's my last 6 notes for that game. And again, I keep these notes chronologically, so I got the timestamps on them, even if I'm not going to read them to you, but my 6th from the last play, man with safety over the top. This is the coverage notes, not what Zay Flowers did. Next one, trail man with safety over the top. Trail man is like the DB or the corner will kind of like let himself get beat. I don't want to say let himself get beat, but he'll let the receiver get behind him. And that's where I don't get off on people who talk about like, oh, he can stack and do this. Some of those people who say that thing don't even understand what trail man is. So you're trailing behind the receiver intentionally because you have safety help over the top. It's what the Tampa Bay Bucks did to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl 2 or 3 years ago against Tyreek Hill and some of those other guys. They played trail man with the safety over the top. Patrick Mahomes was unable to fit things in over the top of the trailing DB and inside of or in front of or around the safety. There just was nowhere to throw the football. Kind of like intentionally letting yourself get beat deep. All right, so that was the 5th from the last note, the 4th from the last. The next one, trail man again. The next one beats the corner, but there's no safety help, just not targeted on the in cut. It was like a Z under. He's wide open. He's actually slapping his hands to get the ball, but the quarterback didn't throw it to him. The next one, the 2nd from the last note, the backside X, there's a safety over the top, not targeted on a post. And then the last one, smash in concept, not targeted, over, under, / bracket, meaning they had one guy on the inside leverage, one guy on the outside leverage, and the quarterback was either unable to get him the football or didn't think that he was open. Look, my point in saying all of that is NC State had seen him multiple years in a row. As the game developed, they showed their best look to stop Zay Flowers, of course recognizing that the other guys didn't have as great a chance to beat them for a touchdown. But I think when you talk about divisional opponents in the NFL or teams within your conference in college football who've dealt with you for 2 or 3 years in a row, they understand, hey, we have a guy here who's too dangerous for us to deal with. Let's allocate more resources to him and make other people beat us. Look, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really like Zay Flowers' game when people started tagging me and stuff on Twitter. It happened probably 6 or 8 times, and they mentioned him for the Ravens. I'm not going to say I objected to it. I just don't accept people's opinions quick. I try to form my own. I want my evaluation to be original. And personally, I still don't want the Ravens to draft him at 22. That doesn't mean I don't think he's a hell of a player. I do. To be honest with you, I think he can contribute immediately. I do. I think immediately, like day one. The other receivers that I've talked about, even A.T. Perry, someone who I really, really like, I'm not sure he's a starter from day one. I really like Rashee Rice. I would put him in the same category. Quentin Johnston's going to start. I think Zay Flowers, best case scenario next year, if he's utilized properly and he's in the right situation, I think he could score 8 or 10 touchdowns next year. I do. Unless his athleticism just doesn't transfer. unless he can't make people miss at the NFL level. And let me explain that. So in college, there will be like an under route that he catches at 8 yards, and he jukes the first guy and gets to the sideline, outruns the second guy, and what could have been maybe, a 12, 14, 15-yard gain turns into a 40-yard gain or even a touchdown. In college, he was able to make two people miss on the plays I'm describing right there. In the NFL, say he doesn't make the first guy miss. Now it's only a 10-yard gain on 3rd and 13. Well, it's a different level impact that Zay Flowers is having. I think that's entirely possible. It's possible that his athleticism transfers, but not with the depth of impact, not with the big plays downfield. I guess that's possible. It's also possible that it does. And he becomes a serious weapon for some team, like the Ravens or the Texans. Or I really like him to Arizona. I'm not a Cardinals fan. And I understand he got Marquise Brown there already, so people are going to object to this. But let me just read you some information. Marquise Brown's making $13.4 million this season coming up. And it's his 5th year in the league. And then he's an unrestricted free agent in 2024. Current market value for Marquise Brown, meaning projected salary beyond 2023, beyond this next year, when he becomes a unrestricted free agent, current market value is 3 years, $49 million. And I think his salary this year, like I said, is 13.4. Can Zay Flowers give you something similar to Marquise Brown or more in the Arizona offense? Yes, I think he can, because he can make people miss, and you can do more with him than you can do with Marquise Brown. And I'm a Marquise Brown fan. Like, I loved him on the Ravens team. I did not want him to be traded away when it occurred. I wish we'd been able to keep him and make things work, but we were not. I think somewhere between 28 and 45, there'll be a team that looks at Zay Flowers as a potential weapon, maybe earlier. I think there's a lot of explosive plays for this guy to make if he's put out in space in the right situation. If you want to say he's a gadget guy, well, the film doesn't show that to me. I'll be honest with you. He made all types of plays from 2020 to 2022 at all 3 levels, meaning vertical plays deep, intermediate routes, and then short concept, stop route, speed outs, out and up, double moves. And then my final thought is this. There has certainly been a lot of smaller wide receiver slot guys who lit up college, their respective schools, and it didn't translate to the NFL because maybe their athletic advantages weren't as great in the NFL because it's better athletes in the NFL, bigger, faster, stronger, and presumably better coached in some cases. The one that pains me to say here is Tavon Austin, even though he did score 10 touchdowns in 2015, 5 receiving touchdowns, 4 rushing touchdowns, and 1 punt return for a touchdown in the same season. I think that's a pretty unique season, and I don't think there's been that many people across NFL history who give you double-digit touchdowns that occurred in 3 different ways. And Tavon Austin did have 19 touchdowns through his first 3 years in the NFL with the Rams, but never lived up to the West Virginia output and performance. So there's been more guys like Tavon Austin, who's one of my favorite players. I actually saw him play in high school multiple times in person. I saw him play when he was 13 years old. I saw him play when he was 14 years old. But there has been some, and they had tremendous impact. And Zay Flowers' profile looks similar to them. Zay Flowers, 5'9", 182 pounds, 69-inch wingspan, 4.42 40-yard dash. I'll give you 3 names of guys who had an impact, either prolonged impact, Hall of Fame possible caliber players, or guys who had burst impact 1, 2, 3 seasons and then kind of faded off, but still were big names. Steve Smith, 5'9", at the combine. This is combine measurements. 5'9", 184, 4.44 40-yard dash. Tyler Lockett, 5'9", really almost 5'10", 182 pounds, 4.40 40-yard dash with a 70-inch wingspan, which is, I think, 2 inches shorter than, or 1 inch longer than the wingspan that Zay Flowers measured at. And then this is going to date me and maybe date some of y'all too. Zahir Hakeem, who won a Super Bowl with the Rams in his second season, I think. 5'9", 179, even though he finished his career a little heavier. 4.45 40-yard dash. Didn't put up the statistical impact over the course of his career, Steve Smith or Tyler Lockett, but was a demon slot number 3 receiver for the Rams for those Marshall Faulk, Kurt Warner teams that won one Super Bowl and easily could have won another were it not for one of the greatest defensive game plans and upsets, of all time by the Patriots and Bill Belichick. Look, there's other more classic traditional wide receivers in this draft. I think the wide receiver depth in this draft is better than a lot of us presumed maybe 3 months ago, 2 months ago, or even a week ago. In my opinion, Zay Flowers is a unique player, even in this group. He's a guy with the potential to hit home runs. Home runs possibly in a return game, even though I didn't see film of that. When you get to film, you generally just get an offense film or a defense film. And I think for some NFL team picking in the late first round, to early second round, that Zay Flowers could be a part of a grand slam class if utilized correctly. You can see some of the teams I have as the best fits. Packers would probably be the outlier here, I think, and the reason why I'm including the Texans is because they have so many picks. Texans have 5 picks in the first 73, and then I think they actually have pick 100. So I think they have 6 of the top 100 picks, but I might be wrong there. It might be like 102 or 105, but it's definitely 5 of the first 73. I think Zay Flowers is definitely a guy who could end up there. If he was to fall to like where the Texans pick at like 65, or if he was to be available at like 44 or 45, I could see the Texans trading up to get him if they didn't get the wide receiver they want at 12 or 33. Because I think the Texans are going quarterback at 2 and then receiver at 12 or 33. If they don't get the guy they want at one or both of those positions in terms of receiver, I think you could see them trade up for a guy like Zay Flowers. The Ravens obviously need playmakers on the outside. I understand that would be the concern, but you have to, at this point, presume that Rashad Bateman is going to be a guy who's healthy, and Zay Flowers is someone who's lined up all over the place in college, appears to give you game-breaking, big play ability downfield. Outside the numbers, he has made enough plays there for me to feel confident that he can do that against quality athletes. In the Syracuse game, I think he was going up against Garrett Williams, who will be a pretty high draft pick as a corner, and multiple other teams he's performed well against over his 4-year career at Boston College. Look, this is tough for me to produce because I'm not showing the video. I'm just alluding to it and describing or summarizing it to you. So if you don't enjoy these, please let me know. I like producing them because it's some kind of output based on the film that I watch and then the Twitter videos that I put out. And if you think other people would maybe enjoy, this content, these draft profile videos, please consider sharing a link to this video on social media to help this video get more reach.